Previously, we looked at some of the burnt offerings, and today we're going to be looking at the cereal offerings. Leviticus 2:1. When anyone offers a cereal offering to the Lord, it shall be of fine flour, and he shall pour oil over it, and lay frankincense on it. I am by no means a master baker, one who has mastered the craft of bread making. But it is my understanding that fine flour is flour that has been ground really fine. In most bread products that we eat here in the West, we don't typically use fine flour. We use a more coarse grain. That's what we make all of our breads out of. But when it comes to making pastries and the finer things of flour, we use fine flour. The oil that was used was most likely olive oil. There are many olives in that land, and olives are something that it is generally not too difficult to make oil from. A lot of the oils we have in the West here are far more complicated and require fancy machines to make oils from, so olives would have been the way to go. The third thing we see here is frankincense. Now, frankincense is an aromatic resin from a tree. The trees kind of produce it, and it has a very distinctive smell and is one of those smells that can kind of overpower other smells, so that it would be a good way to mask some of the other scents that would be found in the generalized area. After a burnt offering where an animal is kind of cooked to completion, there's a point in that where it probably smells really good, but then as it keeps cooking, it's got more of a bitter smell to it, and it can be very overwhelming. But frankincense, the smell of it can kind of overwhelm that bitterness smell that lingers after cooking the meat to its fully charred state. Leviticus 2:2. And he shall bring it to Aaron's sons, the priests. Out of it he shall take a handful of the fine flour and oil, with all its frankincense, and the priest shall burn this on the altar as a memorial portion of it, an offering made by fire, of a sweet and satisfying fragrance to the Lord. 2 and 3. What is left of the cereal offering shall be Aaron's and his sons. It is a most holy part of the offering made to the Lord by fire. So we have this cereal offering given to the Lord, and this is very distinct and different than the other offerings. It is different than the burnt offering that we saw previously that had the total consumption of the animal by fire, and it is different in the sin offering and what portion of it is consumed by the flame. We have an offering here that is not of animals, but is of plant products. In the cereal offering, it's a bit different. We have somebody giving this offering here, and he gives it to the priest, and the priest takes a handful of it. So he's kind of dividing the cereal offering, and he takes his handful of it, he puts it on the fire, cooks it in there, and that is the Lord's portion. And the leftovers, the priest gets to keep the leftovers. And in this instance, this type of cereal offering, we just have flour mixed with oil and some frankincense. So it's not bread completed, this is the raw materials to make said bread. So the priest will be able to take this leftover flour and oil and be able to create their own bread for their own consumption. This is one of the ways that the Lord provides for the priest, so that the priest will be able to eat food and continue on existing and working for the Lord. Leviticus 2:4. When you bring as an offering cereal baked in the oven, it shall be unleavened cakes of fine flour mixed with oil, or unleavened wafers spread with oil. 2:5. If your offering is cereal baked on a griddle, it shall be of fine flour, unleavened, mixed with oil. 2:6. You shall break it in pieces and pour oil on it. It is a cereal offering. 2:7. And if your offering is cereal cooked in the frying pan, it shall be made of fine flour with oil. 2:8. And you shall bring the cereal offering that is made of these things to the Lord. It shall be presented to the priest, and he shall bring it to the bronze altar. 2 and 9. The priest shall take from the cereal offering its memorial portion, and burn it on the altar, an offering made by fire, a sweet, satisfying fragrance to the Lord. 2 and 10. What is left of the cereal offering shall be Aaron's and his sons. It is a most holy part of the offering made to the Lord by fire. So we have a wide variety of different food products, cereal products available to give to the Lord for this cereal offering. And it's quite interesting. The common thing I think I see between them is that there is fine flour involved, there is oil involved, and of course, none of it is leavened bread. I think we'll take a quick look at all these. So we started off at the beginning of this chapter, we had the raw ingredients. We had the flour, we had the oil, and we had the frankincense. Now we have the oven. We have the bread being baked in the oven. So this could be like a full contemporary loaf, or this can be like crackers. And in the case of it being the loaf, the oil is incorporated into the mixture before it is being baked. And in the second instance, this unleavened wafers, it's almost like crackers with oil being spread on top of them. Now, something to be of note, I mean, here in the West, we usually probably spread butter or margarine or different jams on bread, but in a lot of different parts of the world, adding olive oil to your bread after baking it is a pretty good combination. There's a lot of flavor in these olive oils, and they didn't have other ingredients we had when it comes to baking bread, so their bread was probably quite bland. So adding this oil to it was something to kind of kick it up a notch, to bring a lot more flavor into the bread. And dipping your bread in olive oil, spreading a little bit of olive oil on the bread, this would be something done to bring the bread to life, to give it some more character, so that's not just the most bland thing imaginable. The second one we see here is the griddle. Now, when I see this, I just think of camping. When you go camping, you get like the grill, you put it over the fire, and then you mix up your bread and just put it on the grill, and it just kind of cooks it, and it's just really good. Granted, the bread that I typically make while camping is like baking powder, flour, salt, and water, so it's leavened bread, so that would be illegal in this instance. But just that thought of having bread kind of grilled over a fire probably has a tremendous amount of flavor. The fire really enhances, like the smoke that gets on the bread. Oh yeah, good stuff. And this is similar to the oven, right? That the flour is mixed with the oil and it's just kind of cooked on the grill. I think the type of bread that they're looking at here, it's probably like a really thin bread and probably cooked till it's really crispy. So it's almost like chips. So it's, or naan bread or something, right? Like an unleavened naan bread. It's ripped into little pieces and then doused in oil. So it's basically chips and dip. Good stuff. The next one we're looking at here is the frying pan, and I think in this instance, oil is placed on the frying pan and the bread is fried on the frying pan. And the oil makes it so that the bread doesn't stick. I think that's what we have going on here. So it's still cooked with oil, but the oil is not incorporated into the dough itself. Or maybe it is, but it's also fried in it. It doesn't say that the oil is incorporated into the dough in this one. So the priests, they receive this bread from the person making the offering, and they put a portion of it on the fire and cook it till it's gone, and then they get to keep the rest and they get to eat that themselves, and it helps sustain them. And I think the priests would really appreciate having this variety of bread types for their own consumption, because it would be very boring if it was all the same. This chapter is kind of making me hungry. Just thinking of a nice fried bread. Oh, yeah, that stuff's good. I am also going to make the recommendation here that try dipping bread in olive oil to see what it's like. Don't go too crazy with it. Don't go full submersion or anything. Maybe just a little bit of a sprinkle. Or if you're making like a grilled cheese sandwich, instead of buttering the sides, use olive oil instead. It's pretty good. Leviticus 2:11 No cereal offering that you bring to the Lord shall be made with leaven, for you shall burn no leaven or honey in any offering made by fire to the Lord. So here we have the restriction on the leaven. God is not a fan of leaven. A little leaven, leaven the whole lump, and leaven is a symbol of corruption. If you're corrupt a little bit, you get totally corrupted. So it makes sense why this is the way that it is. And it is something that we see throughout the Bible, both Old and New Testament. The idea of leaven. Leviticus 2:12 As an offering of first fruits, you may offer leaven and honey to the Lord, but they shall not be burned on the altar for a sweet odor to the Lord. For their aid to fermentation is symbolic of corruption in the human heart. So the first fruit is the agricultural version of the firstborn. So every year, I guess it would depend on what crop you're growing. Maybe something's harvested in the autumn, maybe it's whatever, right? So whatever is harvested every year, they're first of that. So when the first harvest comes in, the first fruit of that harvest, there's a portion of that that belongs to the Lord. And depending on what people are growing, maybe there's leaven in it. And we got the description here of honey. I mean, maybe honey, you add water to it, it makes mead, which is like an alcoholic beverage, and that's not really an appropriate offering. So there's certain things that are not an appropriate offering to be burnt on the altar, but God's still going to take them as the first fruits. And what they're going to do with them down the road, I guess that would depend on what it is exactly. Leviticus 2:13 Every cereal offering you shall season with salt, the symbol of preservation. Neither shall you allow the salt of the covenant of your God to be lacking from your cereal offering. With all your offerings you shall offer salt. Salt is very interesting when it comes to the Bible. There's the physical properties of salt that make it interesting. Then we have these spiritual interpretations as far as the meaning of salt. And that's also interesting. So let's look at the physical property, and then we'll look at the spiritual. So first of all, salt is an incredible food preservative. When salt is placed on meat, we get salted meat. It lasts a very long time compared to meat that has no salt on it. It's in different breads and things. It acts as a preservative there as well. In canned goods, there's a lot of salt that is used. Now, one of the best examples that I can think of is the McDonald's French fries that never rot. Now that mysterious powder that is placed on the French fries to prevent them from rotting, that is salt. Salt is incredible at food preservation. In many ways, salt is the reverse of the leaven. The leaven, you get a little bit on it and the whole thing spoils. Salt, you get salt on there, nothing happens. It's exciting. So salt is kind of a symbol of preservation for its ability to preserve food, and its purification because the food doesn't go bad, or at least much slower than usual. And that is part of the symbolic meaning of salt. In the culinary world, beyond the preservation, salt has a certain flavor or taste or an attribute to it that is often very desired in culinary arts and cooking. Some would even say it adds impact or the ability to influence the flavors that are around it, and that's kind of neat. I think there's probably another attribute to this as well that isn't as important, but so these bread offerings, or I guess these are the cereal offerings, they're made into bread and they're cooked on the altar, and then the leftovers, the priests get to eat them. Having salt on them would probably make all these different bread offerings a lot better tasting. I don't know if you've ever had bread that has no salt in it and is just like flour and water, but that is kind of terrible. So having a little bit in salt on there, season it up a little bit, would make this a lot more palatable to the priest. To some degree, I think God's looking out for his priests in this instance. We're going to see a lot more verses dealing with salt later on, but the big takeaway here is that the salt is being added to all of these offerings, all of the cereal offerings. Leviticus 2 and 14. If you offer a cereal offering of your first fruits to the Lord, you shall offer for it of your first fruits grain in the ear, parched with fire, bruised and crushed grain out of the fresh and fruitful ear. 2 and 15. And you shall put oil on it and lay frankincense on it. It is a cereal offering. 2 and 16. The priest shall burn as its memorial portion part of the bruised and crushed grain of it, and part of the oil of it, with all its frankincense. It is an offering made by fire to the Lord. So for most of this chapter, we've been looking at cereal offerings. We've seen quite a few different types of cereal offerings. And what we see here in Leviticus 2 and 14 is a cereal offering being given as a first fruit offering. So this is a first fruit offering that is given of a grain, or like a wheat or whatever, a cereal type of grain. Normally when it comes to grains, what you would do is you would let them dry out and then you would grind them into flour. But because this is fresh grain, it's not possible to really do that. So we almost have the idea of kind of heating it up to accelerate the drying out process and then grinding it up to offer it as a first fruit offering, even though it is made of cereal. Also, we have this described as a coarse grain rather than a fine flour, so it's a little bit more chunky.